Okay, so welcome back, students. So I'm going to start the last part of today's lesson, right? So our lesson was Sri Lankan English. So we are going to start the last part. So before I start today's lesson, let's do a small game, a grammar game. It's about linking words. Okay, so now I hope you can see the screen, and now I'm going to start it. So what you have to do is you need to click the correct answer. Okay, so there are three multiple choices. You need to pick the correct one. So you also can pick the answers with me. Okay, the party was boring, so I went home. She left the office early because she had a terrible headache. Next one, I am going to the post office. So as to send some letters. Next one, he didn't stop working, although it was already past midnight. Next one, we bought a plan of the town in order not to get lost. He is learning Spanish, so he will probably work in Spain. We wore warm clothes because it was quite cold. Next one. Uh, although it was raining heavily, they kept playing. Okay, missed it. He lives far away, so we hardly ever see each other. Then she wanted to talk to Tom, but he wasn't at home. So we have completed the game. So our score is 10 out of 10. Okay, so hope you enjoyed it. And then we'll move to the lesson now. Okay, hope you can see the screen now. Right. Then coming back to the lesson. So we are going to discuss the post-colonial literature in Sri Lankan English. Right. First read the slide for yourselves. Okay, let's see. Post-colonial writings in Sri Lankan English have played a significant role in representing Sri Lanka and conveying Sri Lankanness in an international arena, especially through the means of morphological and syntactic features, right? So, literature also plays a main role when it comes to Sri Lankan English, okay? Because, in literature, basically in our short stories and poems, okay? The Sri Lankan English variety has been displayed in many ways, okay? Uh, and there are a lot of Sri Lankan English writers who try to take out Sri Lankan English variety throughout those books. Okay. So some writers such as Carl Muller are boldly employing not-pot English to convey their thematic concerns, while others refuse to use it in their text, thus rejecting their own class and social identities. Now, when it comes to actually books and novels, especially novels, short stories, people try to maintain a standard language. Okay, the language is very standard because it's been documented. Okay, like unless we speak, the language should be very formal. Okay, when it comes to writing. However, the writers like Carl Muller are boldly employing not-put English variety. So you know what is not-put English. So we had a standard Sri Lankan English variety and a non-standard Sri Lankan English variety. So we discussed it in the previous lessons. So now, anyway, the writers like Carl Muller, they actually have incorporated not what or the non-standard Sri Lankan English variety in their literature text or literary text. And they were trying to reject their own class and social identities because we know that the standard Sri Lankan English was spoken by the native speakers of English in Sri Lanka. So from them actually we got this standard variety of Sri Lankan English. So however, by incorporating not English, so they actually try to reject their own class. In Karl Muller's The Giant Fruit Tree, it should be also noted that non-standard English is used with the characters who do not belong to the upper class speaking class, hence directly linking the text to the social concern of classism. In calculus, the jam tree. So in this lesson, actually, we are going to look at one of the literature texts, the jam tree by Carl Muller. And it should be also noted that non-standard English is used with the characters who do not belong to the upper English speaking class. So in this book, Carl Muller has tried to bring out some characters who do not belong to the upper English speaking class. Okay. And that's why the book is directly linking to the social concern of classism. Okay. Read the following extract from The Jam Fruit Tree by Carl Muller and identify 5 features of Sri Lankan English. So now identify. You can note them down. Okay. Okay, now let's see. Even when the Jiang would pop his head over the fence and say, "Hello, Merrill, haven't seen you for a long time." Merrill would go quite red and lower his eyes and mutter something about being busy. No one could fathom why, and even Papa. So, Papa is a Sri Lankan word, okay? So, we are not using Kalmula has not used the word father or dad, instead of it's Papa, okay? Workmaster would say, "Such a nice chap, that Dijiang, very fond of children. Don't know why he doesn't think of getting married." Eileen told Sena boy, Ane, so another feature, Ane, right? "I don't know about all this. You promised me to marry me, no?" So a tag question, no, is seen here, right? Everybody knows this, and you gave ring also. That's all right. You can keep ring if you like. Only what I'm saying is that this Berry is whom I want to marry. But you said no. Once again, attack question, no, right? That she is very young and her mama won't allow. All foolishness. So that is also another syntactic feature. All foolishness, right? I think having me and here I'm doing everything you'd like, and all these months you are coming, and everybody knows that we will get married and all. Supposing you cannot marry this Beryl, now you are promoted also. I thought we can get married soon, instead of which you are telling something else. But what to do, Elaine? This Beryl is. So, reduplication, okay? It's don't know. May not like you at all. When I saw her, I felt like something. You kept ring, never mind, you can get my other fellow. Right. Then, first we'll look at the author Carl Muller, okay, the writer of this book, The Jamfruit Tree. Muller came from a pure Sri Lankan existence that distinguished him from the diaspora. Completed his education from Royal College. Having never been an academic that has studied literature in depth, he was born in Kandy, and he later went on to serve in the Royal Ceylon Navy, the Ceylon Army, and the Port of Colombo as pilot station signalman. So Muller is from pure Sri Lankan diaspora, okay? And then he was educated at Royal College, and then having never been an academic that studied literature in depth. So he didn't study literature in depth, okay? As he was born in Kandy, and he later went on to survive the Royal Ceylon Navy, the Ceylon Army, and the Port Colombo as a pilot station signalman. He worked as a journalist, so he was also a journalist in the early 60s and has worked in leading newspapers in Sri Lanka and the Middle East. So he was working as a journalist in several leading newspapers in Sri Lanka, including some newspapers in Middle East as well. Then his inspiration to pen a novel dealing with burgher family engaged in government service came naturally and effortlessly. Okay. Uh, so he also wanted to deal with open a novel which aligns with the burgher family engaged in government service. Okay. So the novel is therefore often considered to be quasi-fictional as opposed to completely fictional. So many aspects from this personal life and experience just can be seen in detail in the work The Yakada Yaka and Once Upon a Tender Time that followed, forming a trilogy of novels. The Jamfruit Tree, in its descriptive technique, dialogue, narration, as well as language, comes across as authentic, true to life. So, out of all these novels, Jamfruit Tree novel actually plays a significant role in depicting Sri Lankan English variety. Okay, let's see this video about Karl Muller.
Born on the 22nd of October 1935, Karl Muller is a Sri Lankan writer, poet and journalist best known for his trilogy about burghers in Sri Lanka, The Jam Fruit Tree, Yakadayaka and Once Upon a Tender Time. He won Gratian Awards for The Jam Fruit Tree in 1993 and a State Literary Award for his historical novel Children of the Lion. Veteran journalist and writer Karl Muller was honoured by the state, being bestowed with the title Kala Kirti. Muller was born in Kandy, the eldest in a family of 13. He studied at Royal College Colombo and he left home at the age of 18 to join the Royal Ceylon Navy as a signalman. He went on to briefly serve in the Ceylon Army and later joined the Colombo Port Commission as a signals officer. Next, Muller tried his hand at journalism and eventually marrying Soshan Harris and leaving Sri Lanka in order to work at newspapers in the Middle East. In a statement on Facebook, his son Jeremy Muller said, and I quote, "At 2 o'clock on the morning of the 2nd of December 2019, Karl Muller breathed his last." He added, and I quote, "He had been suffering from dementia and was getting progressively worse during his last years." The statement read, "My father, Karl Muller, accomplished much in his life. He was a seaman and then a military man." It added, and I quote, "He was a musician, played the piano by ear, and had a gift of being able to play anything that he heard. He had a wicked sense of humour and a rare gift of writing satire and comedy. He was prolific in his writing, words were always his friends, and he could string them together to tell stories or expound facts as he saw fit." Unquote. Karl Muller joined Channel 1 MTV on our program Nothing Personal.
At the end of it all, if you could trade it all back and have a happy childhood, would you take it?
No. It is that experience. It is what sort of a ring I went through when I was young that has put me into this position today.
His final rites were performed on the 2nd of December at the Mahayava Cemetery.
Okay, so that was about the writer Karl Muller. Right. Now, so this is a book which also talks about the burgher families in Sri Lanka. Okay. So now I'm going to play a small video about the burgher families in Sri Lanka.
Myself as anything other than a Sri Lankan. I've never considered myself as anything other than a Sri Lankan. And when I was in school, there was no division, no separation, no difference. I'm 74 years old, darling. And when I was in school, we were one Sinhala, Tamil, Burger, Muslim.
Very nice, very nice.
The St. Nicholas Home for Burgher Ladies in Colombo, Sri Lanka is home to 45 unmarried and widowed Burgher women. Burghers, the descendants of Dutch, English, and Portuguese colonials, had a prominent position in Sri Lankan society before the country gained its independence from the Commonwealth in 1948. Now they're a small minority, accounting for less than 1% of the country's population. The St. Nicholas Home is overseen by the Dutch Burgher Union, a society dedicated to the preservation of Burgher heritage. Residents at the home pay a small fee for room and board, although their stays are highly subsidized. A crest above the home's door reads Eendracht maakt macht, the motto of the Dutch Republic during the height of its colonial expansion. The phrase translates as strength and unity, a piece of trivia that few of the home's residents are likely to know, given that the majority of them grew up speaking a different language.
English. We all spoke English. Because it was universal, no? English were taught English, no? So everybody spoke one language.
Burghers are people who talk English. Otherwise, the other languages are Tamil, Sinhala.
I'm sorry I didn't learn Tamil because the two Tamil houseboys we had spoke perfect English.
The Burghers' preference for English may be the largest factor behind their shrinking numbers in Sri Lanka. In 1956, when most of the St. Nicholas residents were young women, the government passed the Official Language Act, or as it's sometimes called, the Sinhala Only Act. The legislation installed Sinhalese as the country's official language and was meant to signal a shift in power. Sri Lanka was no longer to be ruled by the colonial minority, but by the Sinhalese Buddhist majority, who make up over 70% of the country's population. If the goal of the Sinhala Only Act was to dismantle Sri Lanka's colonial power structure, it was a success. Burghers began leaving the country immediately and have continued to this day.
I've got a brother in England, and the others are in Australia.
The Sinhalese, they wanted them to sign letters and all in Sinhalese. They said they couldn't sign without understanding what they're signing for, so they all left Sri Lanka.
But the women of St. Nicholas, all of whom have at least some facility with the Sinhalese language, remained.
I think it's very sad, no? But then they are all leaving the country and going also, so you can't. You have to. Everybody wants to make a better life now. I mean, this is their own community. They can talk to each other. They can fight with each other. They all. I mean, even if the fight is nice, no, your own people, no, you can understand each other.
Is it dry, auntie, now? Doesn't need medicine.
But a desire for community only partially explains why St. Nicholas residents choose to spend their final days in Sri Lanka, while so many of their friends and family members move abroad. Deteriorating health is a factor, as is singlehood. Unluckiness in love seems to be a shared trait among the women of the St. Nicholas home. Were you ever in love?
Only with film stars. And you don't count that. I mean, we all had schoolgirl crushes on people like Gregory Peck and I've forgotten the others.
But I did have a person who we were interested in both of us, and then something went wrong. I discovered he was having another girl.
I had two husbands. After he died, I got married again after some time, but I never conceived. What to do?
Most of the women we asked say that they stay because they can't imagine leaving Sri Lanka. Despite the changes they had witnessed over their lifetime, nowhere else would be home.
Well, I hope I won't be put behind bars for this. But when we gained independence, then people started thinking you're this, I'm that. This is my home. And I have no wish to go anywhere else. That's all. Nothing more. If I was speaking Sinhala, I would say Echarai, Nang Ivarai, which means that's all, I finished.
Okay. Let's see who are the workers in Sri Lanka. Descendants from the Dutch, the Portuguese, the British, and other foreigners who arrived in the island of Sri Lanka and mingled with the local inhabitants. Okay, so they were the people who came from either Dutch or Portuguese or Britain. Basically, they were the main three invaders who came to Sri Lanka. And also they were mingled with local inhabitants. So finally, those people were given a separate nationality as Burghers. The Burghers often stand out because of their curiously mixed features like gray eyes. So they have different, specific striking features like their eyes and the skin, complexion, etc. Okay. The Burghers have always lived it up, forever willing to put a party. The halcyon years of the Burghers were the 30s, the period this book records, when they enjoyed a reasonable standing under British rule, partly because they had strains of European blood and spoke the Queen's language, even if in pidgin and with no grammar or whatsoever. Okay. So they enjoyed a reasonable standing under British rule, partly because they had strains. So they also had strains of European blood. Okay. And also they spoke Queen's language. Okay. Later, under Sinhala domination, they were to be reduced to an object minority. So with the Sinhala domination, okay, when Sinhala people started to, invade the English people who came to Sri Lanka, okay, then finally they became a minority community in Sri Lanka. Many would migrate to Australia or England, the US. The rest lived on in the reckless, fashionable, fed into their genes, but with an aching awareness that their best days were long gone. Okay, so from the video also you may have seen that. Okay, right. So then let's come to the book, the Jamfruit Tree. Okay, so first read the slide for yourself. Okay, let's see. As Muller claims, fact became faction. This is a work of fictional fact or factual fiction. The Jamfruit Tree caught audiences by surprise. It was a piece of writing often referred to as a novel in 4 parts. Okay, so this novel was divided into 4 major parts. First one, the flowering, the bearing fruit, and the ripening. These are the major parts of this novel, the Jamfruit Tree, that delineates the daily lives of Von Bloss family. So the family is the Von Bloss family, a burgher family living in Colombo during colonial times. So that's why we looked at the burgers initially before we counted this part. So the story is about a family, especially it's about a burger family. The name of the family is One Plus family, and this family is living in Colombo during the colonial times. Then, right, the piece is often considered to be a representative account of burghers living in Colombo, serving the government. So, literally, the book is about the burgher families living in Colombo who are serving the government. Okay, with the intention of portraying the lifestyle and ethics of burgher community in Sri Lanka. So the one of the major intentions of this book was to portray or to show the lifestyle and the ethics of burgher community in Sri Lanka. The Van Blesses are unique in their own way. They are informed and burghers by definition, with the core of Sri Lankan identity embedded in them. So what is special in this family about this family is that the Sri Lankan identity was embedded in them, and the Sri Lankanness was depicted through the Van Blesses family. Now read the slide for yourself. Okay. Muller was unafraid of merely in relation to his use of Sri Lankan English. He was also bold enough to describe things as they were, resorting to wild punchlines and linguistic manications, especially in relation to sex. Due to this, the novel has been known to be ever more controversial in terms of themes and language. Nevertheless, it does not diminish the manner in which the Jamput tree changed the landscape of Sri Lankan writing and literature. Remember, the Jamput tree book changed the Sri Lankan writing in English, okay, by being the first to be recognized by the Gratian Trust. So it was the first book to receive the Gratian Trust Award by being authored by someone located in the country without associations of the diaspora as well as the linguistic authenticity. The limited amount of attention Sri Lankan writing in English was getting from an elite small community at the public expanded with the recognition of the novel, cleverly conquered by Muller. So remember, the attention which was received for Sri Lankan writing was very small, okay? And it was received from a small community of the public. And now after this piece of writing, it was expanded with recognition of the novel as well. Then let's focus a bit on the language of this novel. Okay, read it for yourselves. One of the significant factors that critics try to extract from the jackfruit trees is its language, with emphasis placed on the variety of Sri Lankan English that was used by burghers during colonial times. So we need to focus on the language, okay, because it was given an attention to the variety of Sri Lankan English which was used by the burgher people during colonial times. Muller himself classifies his subspecies as those who taught Dutch and spoke English, which did nothing to phraseology or syntax. C.A. Gunawardena described the novel of Karl Muller in his Encyclopedia Sri Lanka. So this was also described in Sri Lankan Encyclopedia by C.A. Gunawardena. The mixed variety is a result of the influence of Sinhala on the day-to-day manner of speaking, which Muller is unafraid to use in piece of literary creativity. So, the language was also influenced by the Sinhala day-to-day manner of speaking. Okay, and Muller was not afraid to use these pieces in his literary piece of work. Then the question tag of no accompanied with other quips of sti, will you, ti, ayo, ane accurately capture the manner in which Sri Lankan English has grown over the years to be a variety of its own. So Muller was also using these tag questions and words like ti, ayo, ane as exactly people in Sri Lanka use when they speak. So finally, they also became a part of Sri Lankan English with this work. Muller documents another kind of burghers who had clawed their way up from a roistering, boisterous bottom rung to study hard, read the rainbow of academic achievement, and look back on their beginnings with pure horror. The common herd, like Beryl's mother, slowly listens to their Cambridge locution and conclude that they talked funny, but that's what comes of learning too much. Okay, so these were taken from the book. What Muller did was to set a precedent of craftsmanship. Sri Lankan novelists before Muller had no ear for dialogue. Suddenly, the average burgher article on the page and all her mixed metaphors and confused tenses. Muller's genius lies in the manner in which he covets his reality in humor. So humor was also brought in this book in different ways. The difficulty as well as the happiness of life are established through the medium of humor, which was rare in Sri Lankan writing in English that was available during that time. So difficulty as well as the happiness of life are established through the medium of humor. So the happiness of life, okay, was tried to depict or show through this novel using the elements of humor, which was rare in Sri Lankan writing in English that was available during that time. There are also flabbergasting moments of laziness. For the wedding, Maudie girl contracts lane women who were busy in bottage lane, home cutting, chopping, basting, baking, roasting, boiling, frying, mixing, mangling, dissing, slicing, grinding, pounding. So all these are features of morphology that were depicted through this novel, The Jackfruit Tree. And then now we are going to look at a book critique of this novel, Jackfruit Tree.
What's up? We're going to do something different today on Bold Like a Leopard. We're going to do just a straight up book review. For those of you that want to take a step back from politics and current events and all the disturbing things that go on in the world today, you can look back at some of the disturbing things that happened back in the 1930s, right? Well, not quite. So, The Jam Fruit Tree by Carl Muller. Of course, over here, you can also see it to the right of me. It is one of the most amusing books I've ever read. Some things in the book I would say are a bit disturbing, especially with the spousal abuse, sexual abuse, child abuse, a lot of very graphic scenes in there. But on the whole, hilarious book. It concerns a community of mixed race people over in Sri Lanka back in the 1930s. As it was known back then, it was Ceylon, and the main focus is this family called the Von Blasses and their father Cecil Prinz and the mother Maudie Girl, and it was a very interesting book for a number of reasons. First of all, the dialect is very unique, and you can kind of hear a different rhythm when you're reading it. Something that's it's both like a mix of Hindi and English, but with a lot more slang thrown in because, of course, if not necessarily you would hear the same type of expressions from most people who come from India today, or from Sri Lanka for that matter. So the premise of the book, the Von Bloss family, they have a number of children, including Anna and Toto Boy, who's an alcoholic, and Son of Boy, who's this violent goon of some sorts, and he's got some real weird stuff in his life. But they have there's so much going on in the family where they're trying to marry their kids off, and at the same time they're keeping up appearances with their local Catholic church and the rest of their community. And to start off, the Burgers as a group, Burghers. So the Burgers are the descendants of Dutch, Portuguese, German, and British colonists, and the Sri Lankan natives, the Sinhalese and the Tamils, and they produce this unique ethnic group of people who I guess what you could say are more European in behavior. They're more European in their belief system than they are South Asian. But at the same time, you can tell that they don't necessarily adjust well to the British way of life, especially as the book gets deeper in, and it goes from the early 1930s, which was a very it was a very good time to be living in Ceylon. It was there was like an abundance of resources that you could get literally any commodity there for a reasonable price, whether it was fruit or meat or fish or anything. There's actually a wedding where they go through like this crazy feast where there's pork and beef and all that. And the problem is that the child who was getting married, or the was an adult, but it was I believe it was Leia. So the Cecil Prinz and Maudie Girl's daughter Leia gets married to a Sinhalese boy, and the problem is that the Sinhalese are Buddhist. So like an hour or two before the actual wedding reception, the mother, Maudie Girl, figures it out, and she's like, oh crap, they can't have any of the meat, so she has to go back to the market and ask for, have some fish bought, and they end up eating the fish, and then, the Sinhalese guests also, they had to get drunk behind the scenes because they're not supposed to get drunk in public or something. So, yeah, that was a pretty funny scene. There's the scene where Maudie Girl, she passes away. These are elderly people, the two parents, and the son, Tato Boy, gets so drunk that he actually falls into the grave, and they have to dig him out. And everybody thought it was the funniest thing that ever happened. in the book. So there's a lot of cartoon violence there. There is a scene where one of the daughters she's being courted by one of the big clerks over in the port, and this guy was like known for like stealing like a ton of crap, and he would just disappear stuff off of shipping containers and stuff. So what he would do is he'd send stuff to the family as a way of courting her, but they thought he was just being like cool and like helping them out. They couldn't take the hint that he was interested in one of their daughters. So this guy George DeMello got really offended at a certain point. He's like, "Hey, they're taking advantage of me. They're not answering any of my they're not answering what I'm doing, and they're not giving me anything back. And obviously, they're not giving me the time of day with regards to their daughter." So he brings his cousin, who's this giant of a man, and has him stand by the jam fruit tree, which is in. So they live on this place called Badaju Lane, which is just a back road in the area where they live. And there's a jam fruit tree at the end of the road, and the jam fruit tree is a metaphor for the whole book. But this guy's like standing by the tree while his cousin's standing by the tree, and he goes up and tries to shame the father, Cecil Prince, into giving his daughter over to him. And meanwhile, so while he's upbraiding the dad, Sonny Boy comes in, and he just sees this and beats the living crap out of George, who's the guy who's courting the daughter, and his cousin runs away. This big hulk of a man. So look, there's no way to do it justice here. There's a lot of flowing language. There's a lot of cartoon violence in the actual in the book. People just getting their clocks cleaned, and it's it's almost like it's like reading a transcript of the Roadrunner versus Wile E. Coyote in certain sense. Some very interesting ways that he was able to do. So this was a guy, Carl Muller. He was able to in his dialogue, he was able to transfer basically from character to character. In one paragraph, you would hear essentially the thoughts of one character, and then in the next one, he does like a breathless, like a effortless handoff to another character and the way they're thinking. It's unbelievable. So yeah, I highly recommend it. Not to, it's probably for more mature audiences due to a lot of the stuff that he talks about in there, especially there's a lot of like really weird sexual stuff in there. But I think that if you want to think about some of the deeper themes in it, so there's the idea that these people are really deeply Catholic, and then one of the kids marries a Buddhist, and they think like it's the worst thing in the world. But then another one of one of the sons, Viva, ends up marrying a girl who's the daughter of a Pentecostal minister. And this Pentecostal minister comes in, and one day he just like smashes their Catholic icons and stuff, and goes nuts. And you actually see Sonny Boy, who's the one of the older sons, beat the living crap out of both him and the father-in-law. And then the family, they become estranged from that kid. He moves away to a different part of the country and starts to just sell stuff for the father-in-law and just preach the Pentecostal gospel. So yeah, you see like religious division, you see ethnic division between the Burghers and the Sinhalese. You see the dominance of British culture at the time. As the book gets closer to the late 1930s, there's this, they note that the education at the time was starting to really, really emphasize the British imperial tradition and the English literature. Geoffrey Chaucer, somebody who we learn about here in the States because, we learn English, we don't learn American. So over there in Sri Lanka, yeah, they were learning British authors of the medieval and Renaissance periods, but they weren't really learning much about their own country and its own heritage. So once independence was reached, and this is touched upon briefly in the book because it doesn't go very far beyond the 1930s. Once Sri Lanka gained independence, this reality ended. The Sri Lankan people, especially the Sinhalese, decided, well, you know, we do have some of the British system left, but the truth is that in order to be our own country, we're going to have to create like an equal society between the Sinhalese and the colonial masters, the former colonial masters, which technically would include the Burghers because they're the descendants of the European colonists and some of their local consorts. So there is a lot of stuff about ethnicity and culture and stuff like that in here, but all in good humor and a lot of it very honestly portrayed. So yeah, pick it up in the stores wherever you go, retail, online. I recommend it highly. Came across it by chance. Probably going to check out a number of other books from the same author and from the same part of the world. And that's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, subscribe to me on BitChute and Minds. Both of those you can reach me at Chef Leopard, and on Gab at Starscream85. Also, if you want to donate, you can find the channel on Subscribestar. My screen name there is also Chef Leopard. Talk to you later. Have a splendid Tuesday.
Okay, now I would give some time for you to do a task. You need to find 3 themes of the novel The Jampfruit Tree and note them down with some explanation. Okay, you need to find 3 themes of the novel The Jampfruit Tree. Right, do it. Right. So we can take the issues of sexuality as one major theme in the novel Chancy Tree. And another one is the issue of sexuality and then religion, and then the identity of burghers as the major themes of the novel, the Chancy Tree. Okay, you can find examples of each of these three themes from the book with the quotations if you need. So those are the three major themes of the novel, Chapter 3. Uh, and the novel actually presents the life of Sri Lankan burghers, right, with a huge authenticity, okay? And that's why it tries to talk about the identity of burghers and then the issues of sexuality and religion and the major theme of this novel. And then there's another activity. Select a favorite scene in the book and summarize the situation. Find examples from the selected scene to support the Sri Lankan English. Okay, so you can do this task individually. Okay, so you need to find your favorite scene in the book and you need to provide a summary of that particular scene, and you need to find examples from the selected scene to support Sri Lankan English. What types of Sri Lankan English features you can find in the book. Do it Okay, so from that point, we are going to wind up the second lesson. So in this lesson, actually, we covered three major parts. First, we discussed the variety of Sri Lankan English, the phonological features, morphological features, and the syntactic features. And then we discussed about writing a paragraph properly, including a topic sentence, supporting details, and then a concluding sentence. And we discussed about few paragraphs as well, and we also wrote some paragraphs. And the third part of this lesson was the post-colonial literature in Sri Lanka. So we discussed about a novel in brief. The novel was The Jackfruit Tree by Karl Muller. And we discussed the language and the significance of the novel and what was it about. And then we also discussed about the writer as well, and we also discussed about some themes and some scenes of this novel. So I hope you have got a clear understanding about this lesson, Sri Lankan English Variety. So thank you for your attention, students. Hope you had noted down everything which we have discussed so far in the lesson. And thank you for your attention.